Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world of moonlit stone courtyards, cold lace sleeves, and secret messages folded in trembling hands. It's the Middle Ages, but not the loud sword-swinging version you might know. This is the quieter story. The one behind castle walls. The one told in glances, sighs, and letters you weren't supposed to read. You're not a knight. You're not a king. You're a noblewoman. 15 winters old, fingers stained with ink and rosewater. Your hair coiled tightly under a veil that makes your scalp itch. And tonight your pulse won't settle, because you're waiting. Out there past the outer gate, past the frost-kissed hedgerow, someone said he would come. Not inside, of course, God forbid, but near enough to leave a token. A ribbon, maybe, or that tiny wooden carving you once admired and tried to pretend you hadn't. It's a warm night, surprisingly. The scent of rosemary and last season hay drifts over the wall. The stone beneath your slippers still holds the sun's heat. You can feel it rising through the soles, like the nervous warmth under your ribs. There's a rustling. Just a cat, you tell yourself. Then no. A shadow taller than it should be. Your heart starts sprinting. You grip the carved edge of the fountain and try not to look too eager or terrified. He's there. Just briefly. Just enough for you to catch the shimmer of something silver before he melts back into the trees. The object flutters down like a petal. He must have tied it to a rock. Clumsy. Romantic. Definitely banned. You scoop it up. It's a tiny scrap of linen, folded with awkward care, and it smells like the leather oil from saddle straps. There's writing. In Latin. Terrible Latin. But it's his. That's how it begins. This strange dance of medieval love. Not with kisses, not with songs, but with little things. The smell of wax from his family's chapel, the sound of his boots over gravel, when no one's watching, the way your maid turns her back and pretends not to notice. Your world is tightly bound, more fabric than flesh, more law than longing. But under it all, something pulses. Let's step back a little. Being a teenage noblewoman in the 12th century is like being an elaborately dressed chess piece. You glide through corridors, glide through lessons, glide through your parents' careful negotiations. Love as you understand it is a rumor whispered between cousins at feast tables. Marriage is what happens to you. But love is something you steal. You're taught to avoid indulgence. Too much emotion, they say, heats the blood. And hot blood is dangerous. It leads to illness, to sin, to bad poetry. So you practice the opposite: cool fingers, composed face, eyes lowered. You master the texture of stillness. But your senses betray you. You remember the way he looked in candlelight, too bright, too much. Your chamber that night had smelled of lavender oil and beeswax, but you could still catch the faint whiff of him rain moss metal. You should have forgotten. You didn't. Historians still argue whether these secret romances were truly common, or simply idealized in songs. What we do know is this: the concept of courtly love arose not from freedom, but from constraint. The stricter the world, the sharper the desire. And so you imagine. Not a full affair, not yet. Just fingertips brushing near a tapestry. Just a poem read aloud too slowly. Just enough to make the heart ache and the fingers tremble. Back in your room, you hide the scrap of linen beneath your mattress. You try to sleep, but the night air is too alive. You can feel every seam of your sheets. The wool is scratchy, the air heavy with peat smoke from the servant's hearth. And you're smiling. You probably won't survive this feeling. Not the way your aunt didn't, or your older sister before she was shipped off to Aquitaine. But tonight you'll let yourself have it, just for a little while. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still with me, post your location and your local time. I'd love to know where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together, because we're just getting started. You wake before the sun, not because anyone asked you to, but because the air in the chamber has shifted. It's colder now, heavy with that damp wool scent that always seems to settle after midnight. The kind of chill that creeps into your sleeves and sets up camp in your bones. Your maid hasn't stirred yet. She's curled like a hedgehog beneath the coarse flax blanket, her braid trailing off the edge of the cot. You move silently, toes brushing the uneven stone floor. Every footstep echoes a little too loudly, because today isn't just another day of embroidery and obligation. Today you're thinking about him, Your reflection in the copper mirror isn't kind. No one looks their best by firelight, and you're no exception. But there's something in your eyes, just the faintest spark, as if you know a secret, and the world hasn't caught up yet. Your hair is braided tight. Your gown stiff with starch and careful pleats smells like lavender and boiled soap. But beneath the fabric, your skin tingles. That scrap of linen still lies hidden under your mattress. You think of pulling it out again, you don't. Outside, the castle stirs. You hear the clatter of hooves in the courtyard. Messengers, maybe. Or just another tax dispute being dragged into daylight. The sky's barely pink, but duty waits for no girl, no matter how full her heart. You're summoned to the solar. There your mother waits. She's dressed in deep burgundy wool, stiff as a verdict. Her mouth is a line so fine you wonder if she's forgotten how to smile. In her lap she holds a spindle, but she's not spinning, just winding the thread over and over, as if trying to keep the whole world from unraveling. She doesn't ask about your morning. She doesn't ask if you slept. She begins with the only thing that matters. You're of age now. You know what that means. Everyone does. In the Middle Ages, girlhood isn't measured in years, but in hips. Once you're old enough to bleed, you're old enough to bargain. And the currency is marriage. Arranged, of course. Always. Love is not part of the plan. Families trade daughters like land parcels with clauses, pledges, and livestock on the side. Your worth is weighed in acres, alliances, and how many sons your hips might someday carry. A wealthy daughter might come with gold and tapestries. A less fortunate one. A goat, maybe two. A well-fed chicken if you're lucky. It's not cynical. It's just business. Lord Raoul has shown interest, your mother says flatly. He has holdings near the coast. His first wife passed last winter. You nod not because you agree, but because not nodding would raise questions. The kind you're not ready to answer. Lord Raoul. You've seen him once. Twice, maybe. Thick beard-stained fingers. He smells like vinegar and salted meat. He is 20 years your senior. Historians still argue whether medieval girls truly accepted this fate without resistance, or whether resistance simply wasn't recorded. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Silence swallowed grief. Small rebellions hidden in lacework and lullabies. Your rebellion right now is a heartbeat. A memory. A flutter of linen in the dark. Later, you escape to the cloister garden. This is your refuge, half wild and overgrown, where no one watches too closely. Rosemary spills over the broken stone borders, and the bees are already at work, buzzing low and slow like a sleepy song. You sit by the fountain. Its water is cold and mossy, but the sound soothes you. Your fingers trail along the rim, collecting dew and dust. You think of what might happen if you said no. You think of the other girls who didn't. You think of him. You almost don't hear her. A soft footfall. Then another. It's Eleanor, your cousin. She's your age, but her eyes are older. She's been betrothed since she was 7, to a boy who died of fever last winter. Now she's in limbo, waiting to be traded again. She sits beside you without asking. Pulls an apple from her sleeve. Offers it silently. It smells like autumn and wood smoke. You take it. Eleanor says only one thing. Don't let them bind you too tightly. She doesn't explain. She doesn't have to. That's the closest thing to a blessing you'll get. You lie awake that night, eyes tracing the wooden beams overhead. Your room smells of damp linen and ash. The hearth has gone cold, but your cheeks are flushed. You don't know what's next. But for now, you hold on to the tiniest defiance. You're not married yet, and love, even if it's just a folded scrap of cloth hidden under your bed, still belongs to you. It's nearly noon when it happens, the glance. The one you've imagined far too many times and yet still weren't prepared for. You're crossing the upper gallery arms full of folded linens that smell faintly of chamomile and wood smoke. Your slippers scuff against the floor, polished stone faintly chilled through the soles. You feel a draft from one of the arrow slits and shiver just slightly. And then you see him. He's standing near the banister speaking with one of the stewards, but his body shifts just subtly, and his eyes find yours. They don't widen. He doesn't smile. That would be too obvious, but the corner of his mouth tightens just slightly. Enough for you to know it's intentional. Enough to make your fingers freeze against the linen and your breath hitch just once. You don't say a word. You walk past. This is how courtly love begins, not in passion but in restraint. In the medieval imagination, love is not something shouted. It is something cultivated like a vine in shadow, twisting gently around the rules, especially when it involves a lady and a knight. You're a noblewoman. He's not quite nobility, but close enough to be dangerous. A knight sworn to your house, your father's favourite, for now skilled, eloquent. Perhaps a bit too bold in his ideas. He is not for you. Not according to your mother. Not according to custom. And yet, courtly love, as sung by the troubadours, is a strange thing. It thrives on absence, on impossibility. The goal isn't consummation, it's yearning. A perfect ache, beautifully maintained. You long for someone you cannot have. And in that longing, you become more refined, inspired, poetic. That's the theory, at least. Historians still debate whether these ideals were genuinely lived or merely performed. Were knights really writing verses on birch bark and hiding them in tree hollows? Or was it all theatrical nonsense layered over very real, very physical desire? You suspect the truth lies in the middle. He begins leaving things. Not letters too dangerous, but tokens. A feather dipped in ink and dried. A piece of leather with a carved heart burned faintly into its surface. A sprig of dried mint wrapped in red thread, each one left somewhere new. In the folds of the tapestry near the chapel, beneath the basin in the laundry alcove, once boldly between the pages of your psalter. It's absurd, romantic, maddening, and your heart begins to beat differently, heavier when you climb stairs, lighter when you see shadows stretch across the floor in just that way. There's no conversation. You've barely exchanged a dozen words. But there's understanding somehow suspended in that medieval space, where eye contact carries more than speech ever could. And in your mind, of course, it becomes more. You imagine him slipping through the orchard in moonlight cloak, brushing against the grass, breath turning white in the chill. You imagine his fingers always gloved in your memory, pulling back your veil slowly like unwrapping something sacred. You imagine he far too much. One night you dream of him. The dream is strange. Not sensual exactly, but vivid. You're both sitting near a fire, speaking of books you've never read. His voice is low, and he's asking questions. Real questions. What you think about faith. What scares you most. What colours you dream in. You wake up with damp hair and a tight chest. And then you remember what Eleanor said. Don't let them bind you too tightly. In the days that follow, you try to distract yourself. Embroidery. Reading. Practicing your French declensions with the chaplain who smells of parchment and clove tea. But nothing quite works. You feel like a room full of candle smoke, dim, sweet, and impossible to breathe in for too long. Then comes the feast. Your family hosts a gathering for the local lords, part tribute, part subtle matchmaking. The hall is sweltering with bodies, torches, and the scent of overcooked venison and apple compote. You wear a gown of pale green wool. It scratches at your collarbone. Your hair is coiled tight, threaded with brass pins that feel too heavy for your scalp. He is there, not seated with the nobles, of course, but near enough to watch. Near enough to see you laugh at a joke you didn't find funny. Near enough to watch your hand tremble slightly as you sip watered wine from a pewter cup. And later, when the minstrels strike up their slowest ballad, and couples begin the formal gliding dance, you feel him move. Not toward you. Of course not, but to the edge of the floor. Hands clasped behind his back. Eyes never quite meeting yours, but never looking away either. Your heart lifts just slightly, and for a moment, amid the hum of lute strings and cinnamon-sweet air, you imagine something reckless. Not running away, not disobedience, just this glance. Held a little too long, returned without fear. And that is enough. It's raining when your father calls for you. Not a soft drizzle, but the kind of rain that strikes the castle walls like thrown seeds, quick, hard, relentless. The scent of wet stone and damp wool drifts through the halls, clinging to everything. You pass servants shaking out cloaks, the hems dripping onto rush-strewn floors. Someone's forgotten to bank the fire in the east hearth, and the smoke curls lazily toward the ceiling, sweet with damp wood. Your father's chamber is warm, overstuffed with vellum scrolls and half-drawn maps. A brazier glows in the corner, the iron crackling with the scent of burning resin. He looks up slowly when you enter, but doesn't greet you. Just gestuures. To a chair. You sit. You wait. And then he says it. You've been promised. Just like that. No poetry. No ceremony. Not even a pause to look at your face. To Lord Raoul, of course. The one with the vinegar breath, and 3 missing teeth. He's wealthy, your father adds, as if gold will make the wedding night easier to bear. And stable. Stability matters. You nod, not because you agree, but because there is nothing else to do. In the Middle Ages, once a promise is made especially by the father of a noble daughter, it is sacred. Binding. Changing your mind is not just frowned upon, it is scandalous, potentially ruinous. But here's the curious thing, love. Despite all its restrictions, still finds ways to bleed through. Historians point to examples: letters between reluctant brides and impossible lovers, secret annulments, even whispered rumors of women who fled abbeys to avoid forced vows. They were punished, yes, but remembered. You're not brave enough to flee. Not yet. After the announcement, everything changes. You are not yourself anymore. You are a contract, a future womb, a key to an alliance. Servants begin treating you with a strange reverence, as if you've already disappeared into another household. They say "my lady" more often. They don't meet your eyes. Even your mother begins speaking to you, as if your thoughts are temporary. You retreat to the one place left, the storage loft above the stables. It smells of straw-dust, old leather, and rain seeping through roof beams. And that's where you find it. A ribbon. Yours. From a gown you wore last winter, tied carefully to the handle of an old saddle. Next to it, something carved into the beam. Just a single word. Your name. Not your full name. Not your family name. Just the one he must have heard whispered once. Maybe twice when no one was listening. The name only those closest to you ever say. It shouldn't mean anything, but it does. You press your palm to the carved wood. The grain is rough, splintery. It stings just enough to make it real. There's a chill in the air, the kind that slips beneath cloaks and pinches the back of your neck. But you don't move. You sit, and you imagine a life unlived. Not the kind where you run off barefoot into the woods. That's for stories, not daughters of estate. But a quieter rebellion, a refusal to feel nothing, a decision to remember deeply, richly, with all the senses. The scent of hay soaked with rain, the texture of linen damp with fog, the warmth of fingers that never quite touched yours. The night before your betrothal feast, your cousin Eleanor finds you again. She brings a tiny bundle wrapped in wool. To wear beneath your gown, she says. It's ridiculous and childish, but it's yours. Inside is a sprig of dried lavender, a miniature charm in the shape of a bird, and a single unmarked ribbon, crimson like sunset over iron. It's not magic, Eleanor shrugs, but it helps. You don't cry. Not yet, but you will. Later, when the music's too loud and the cake tastes like dust. The feast is all gold and smoke. Roasted boar apples glazed in honey. A jug of clove wine passed around like a spell. You sit in the place of honor, ring heavy on your finger hair threaded with pearls. You smile. You speak when spoken to. You lift your cup at the right time. And from across the hall you feel it. A gaze. A weight. He doesn't approach. He wouldn't dare. But for one moment, amid the steam of roasted meat and the clatter of wooden cups, he touches his hand to his chest. Briefly, then turns. That night you return to your room. Remove the veil. Undo the pearls. Let the gown slip off your shoulders and pool on the floor like silence. You climb into bed, fingers clutching the ribbon beneath your chemise. You don't sleep, but you rest. And you remember that even in a world built on duty, love still carves its initials in the dark. The wedding is weeks away, yet you're already vanishing. Every day, a little more of you is wrapped in silk, stitched in formality, pressed into molds, too stiff to breathe in. Your name is spoken less. You're referred to as the future lady of the coast. Your chamber is being cleared. Your dresses are being inventoried. Your reflection begins to feel like a stranger. This morning the frost came early. Your breath fogs in front of you as you step into the garden. The herbs have withered into brittle stalks, but the rosemary still clings to life. You crush a sprig between your fingers. Sharp, resinous cleansing. The cold air bites your nose, but you welcome it. It makes you feel awake, real. Less like a bride in training and more like a body with a heartbeat. You notice something tucked under the bench. At first you think it's another token, but no. It's different. A note. This one is not in Latin. It's in your language, plain and human. The letters are uneven, the ink smudged from damp fingers. It reads only, "When you walk down that aisle, I'll still see you. I'll carry you." Even if the world forgets you, I won't. No name, no signature, but your body knows who wrote it. You press the parchment to your lips. It smells like pine soot and rain. Your pulse flutters in your throat, fragile and fast, like the wings of a moth caught behind stained glass. Historians often question, did women have any agency in their marriages? The answer is rarely. But love, quiet, stubborn, uninvited, was one of the few spaces they could still claim for themselves, even if no one else ever saw it. Even if it ended with a wedding veil. Days pass, and something inside you begins to shift. You start listening differently. You notice how your fiancé speaks to servants brisk without looking at them. How he holds his knife with the same hand he uses to gesture for wine. You catch the way he praises your hands, not for their gentleness, but for their future usefulness in bearing sons. It's not cruelty, it's indifference, but indifference can be its own kind of wound. Then one afternoon you're alone in the small chapel. The light filters through the stained glass, soft reds, blues and dull golds puddling over the stone floor. Dust motes swirl in lazy spirals. It's so quiet, you can hear the wax dripping from the altar candles. You kneel, not to pray, not exactly, just to feel still, and then there's a sound, a shift in air, and you know he's there. He doesn't speak. He kneels beside you, just outside your reach. You keep your eyes forward, but you both feel it. The heat between your shoulders, the sharp scent of smoke on his cloak, the tremble you don't let rise beyond your chest. And then he whispers, barely audible, "If you asked me, I would go with you. No names, no plans, just a thread of breath strung across sacred space." And your breath catches because you want to say yes, but you also know saying yes would mean leaving behind everything. Safety, family, name. The silence stretches, long, tense, and then he leaves. No goodbye, no glance back. The door clicks shut behind him. You remain on the cold stone knees, numb lips dry. The candle beside you flutters. You whisper something not to God, not to him, just to the air. "I don't know if I'm brave enough." Your voice cracks halfway through. It sounds like someone else, someone already leaving. That night the wind howls. You sit in bed, blanket up to your chin, and let the chill find its way in. You think about what it means to belong to someone, what it means to surrender, what it means to resist, and whether resistance is even possible in a world where every corridor is watched, every footstep counted. You grip the ribbon Eleanor gave you, and for the first time you imagine not the ceremony, but the aftermath, the quiet years, the weight of a ring that no longer means love, but only permanence. You fall asleep with your eyes open, dreamless, but not empty. Morning comes quietly. There are no trumpets, no announcements, just the soft clang of pots in the kitchens below and the cold breath of autumn drifting through the shutters. Your chamber smells of smoke and starch, the linen of your nightgown still holding the faintest scent of crushed rosemary. You sit up slowly, the wool blanket sliding from your shoulders like mist rolling off a hill. Today, you'll learn what being married feels like. Not in ritual yet, but in reality. The housekeeper brings you the bridal chest. It's massive, carved from dark oak, bound with iron hinges that groan like old bones. Inside, layers of cloth, gowns you've never worn, a comb made from ivory etched with birds, small flasks of rose oil, 2 pairs of embroidered slippers, and at the very bottom, a length of pale linen. Your wedding veil. You don't touch it. The housekeeper also leaves something smaller, a belt, woven of silk and silver thread, with tiny bells sewn into the ends. It's beautiful, delicate, but there's weight to it, a symbolism that clings like perfume. Chastity belts, as many imagine them, weren't the armoured contraptions of myth. Real ones were rarer, symbolic, ceremonial, worn perhaps for one day or one night, sometimes locked, often just a sign of ownership. Historians still argue whether they were protective or possessive, whether they honoured the woman or marked her as territory. You fasten it loosely around your waist, not because anyone told you to, but because you want to feel what it means. Later your mother sits beside you. She doesn't speak at first, just pours tea steaming strong, spiced with cloves, and sets the cup in your hands. "Your body is no longer just yours," she says softly, not unkindly. "It becomes a duty." You nod. You don't drink the tea. That evening the kitchens are filled with the scent of leeks and roasting apples. In the halls, minstrels practice tuning lutes, humming snatches of love songs that feel a little too sharp now. Your maid helps you undress. The silk undergown clings to your skin. The chill in the room raises goosebumps along your arms, but you don't flinch. You stare into the mirror, and you feel split. Part of you, a daughter, a dreamer, a girl who once collected pressed flowers and imagined being kissed in the garden. The other part, a bride. A symbol. A name soon to be stitched beside another on parchment and tombstone. You lie in bed that night, arms stiff at your sides, veil hanging from the bedpost. The bed itself is too soft. It smells like lavender and ash, but you can't get comfortable. You shift. You turn. You listen to the wind outside your window, and then beneath the mattress you feel it. The token. Another one. Small, barely there. A pressed violet dried into paper wrapped in a strand of horsehair. You lift it to your nose. It still smells sweet. Just barely. Like something kept too long in a closed book. You don't cry, but your chest aches. Deep. Dull. Like a bruise that hasn't risen to the skin yet. That's when you start writing back. Not to send, just to write. You take a small scrap of parchment meant for prayers, and you scrawl words without grammar, without elegance. I don't want to belong to anyone. Not even you. But I want to be seen. Is that wrong? You fold it. Press it under the stone near the chapel door. You don't know if he finds it. You just needed to say it. Over the next few days you write more. Little notes. Sentences that don't end. Descriptions of dreams. Of fears. Of the way apples smell sweeter when left near the window overnight. You begin noticing things again. The feel of stone warmed by sun. The way cold water stings the tips of your fingers in the morning. The texture of your own breath against your sleeve. You are still here. Still in your body. Even if the world wants to erase it. You don't tell anyone. Not Eleanor. Not your maid. Not even yourself in the mirror. But every time you slip a note into the garden wall or under the chapel bench, your heartbeat slows. Just a little. Just enough. To remind you this life, though chosen for you, still contains moments that are yours alone. The sun slips behind the hills early now. By late afternoon, the castle is already in shadow. The air thickens with the smell of burning peat and wet wool, and every corridor feels colder than the last. The chill isn't just outside anymore, it's in your bones, your breath, your blood. But this evening you take a different path. Not to the chapel. Not to the stables. You go to the herb garden. It's mostly bare this time of year, just twisted stalks and frostbitten leaves. But beneath the surface it still holds secrets. You kneel beside the rosemary fingers, tracing the rough stems. They prick your skin, but the scent rises like memory, sharp, clean, almost medicinal. A scent for grief and remembrance. For brides and burials alike. You pick one sprig, then two. Behind you, a voice whispers. For clarity or courage, you spin, nearly dropping the herbs. It's not him. It's a woman. Older than you, maybe twice your age. Her hair tucked beneath a coarse coif, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. You recognize her barely. One of the midwives. Or the apothecary's niece. She's often in the background. Unnoticed. Unbothered. But not unknowing. I was gathering for a tonic, you stammer. She just smiles. Of course you were. And then she kneels beside you and starts plucking sage. Her hands are steady, knuckles red from cold. Her fingertips stained green. She hums as she works a tune older than the stone beneath your feet. A lullaby. A prayer. Hard to tell. Women like her live in the margins of stories. They don't wear silk. They don't attend feasts. But they know things. They know how to pull thorns from skin without leaving scars. They know which flowers ease fever, which roots bring sleep, which mixtures spark dreams, or stop a pregnancy before it begins. And they speak in codes. She hands you a pouch. For your nerves, she says, with a wink too, knowing for comfort. You nod. But don't ask what's inside. Instead, you ask something else. Have you ever loved someone you couldn't have? Her hands pause. Then she says, Child, I've only ever loved the ones I couldn't have. Historians still puzzle over the depth of knowledge held by medieval women in herbal medicine. Some were midwives. Others were accused of witchcraft. Some were both. The line between healer and heretic was thinner than a hair. But the herb garden was theirs. It was a space of whispering power, and sometimes of whispered love. You begin to return, not every day, but often. You learn the names of the plants, their textures, their smells. You crush mint between your fingers until your nails sting. You breathe in sage and thyme until your lungs feel cleaner. You bite into a calendula petal and let the bitterness settle on your tongue. Your senses sharpen. Your thoughts do too. One morning she gives you a vial. It's tiny, stoppered with wax. The liquid inside is golden brown, slow as syrup. For bravery, she says. If you choose to run, or if you choose to stay, you keep it under your pillow. You don't ask how it works. That night, you write another note. But this one isn't for him. It's for yourself. I'm still here. I still feel. I'm not numb. That must mean something. You burn it after writing. The smoke smells like rosemary. You notice over time that your breathing has changed. Not deeper, just slower, more deliberate. You move through the halls without rushing now. You look longer at the tapestries. You listen to the servants' gossip with half a smile. You drink your tea even when it's gone cold. You begin to feel, aware, of your skin, your hunger, your sadness, your capacity. Your cousin Eleanor sees it too. She doesn't ask. But one evening as you stand by the garden gate, she slips a note into your palm. It's not madness to want more, just dangerous. You fold it carefully. You don't reply. But that night you add another ribbon to your bundle beneath the bed. It's green. For growth. And courage. And maybe, just maybe, choice. The snow arrives suddenly. Not a gentle dusting, but a thick, muffling silence that swallows the world whole. Roofs vanish under white. Courtyards become pale seas. Every step crunches. Every breath hangs visible in the air, curling like steam from a kettle. You wake to find the windows fogged, the shutters stiff with frost. And tucked beneath your door, another letter. This one is different. Longer. More carefully written. Ink darker. Less hurried. The parchment is smooth, pressed flat, still faintly scented with smoke and oddly clove. I dreamed you were standing in the snow, not cold, not waiting, just standing as if you'd always belonged there. And I woke up knowing you never needed saving, just seeing. You read it 3 times. You fold it once. You don't hide it. You keep it tucked in your sleeve all day, brushing your wrist with every motion. Your daily rituals feel stranger now, louder, more artificial. The embroidery hoop that once brought you calm now feels like a cage. The taste of porridge too bland. The chapel hymns once steadying now, too sweet, too soft, too far removed from what churns inside you. And yet, you follow them all, because stillness, even when suffocating, is often safer than movement. Later that afternoon you find yourself in the gallery. The snow has stopped. The sun is melting the edges. Water drips from the eaves, slow and rhythmic like the ticking of a distant clock. You stand at the window, the leaded glass cool against your fingertips. The snow beyond is untouched except for one set of prints. Boats, just one direction, leading away from the chapel. He was there. You feel it in the way the silence hums, in the scent of pine resin left faintly on the windowsill. You think of calling out, of sending a reply, of leaving some mark, anything, but instead you just breathe. You count to 5. You let the moment pass like breath on a mirror. In the days that follow, something inside you changes. Not in a loud way, but quietly, deliberately. You begin writing poems, tiny ones, lines scrawled into the margins of your prayer book, rhymed couplets sewn in your thoughts while your needle slips through fabric. Nothing profound, just toppling fragments. If I vanish in lace and lore, will you still remember how I saw the cracks in stone, the scent of time, the way we loved outside of time? You never show them to anyone, but writing them feels like stitching a hidden lining into your soul. Historians sometimes uncover these kinds of poems, hidden in the bindings of medieval books, slipped between pages, or etched faintly into the backs of hymnals. They rarely have names. Often they're unfinished, but they speak, and they endure. One evening, while clearing out the drawer beneath your cot, you find something unexpected. An old ribbon of yours, one you'd thought lost long ago. It's stiff frayed at the ends, stained with a dot of beeswax. and tied around it another note. Small, folded tightly. No signature, just 6 words. I'll remember you as you are. Your breath catches. It's not a declaration, not a promise, just a witnessing. And somehow that's the most loving thing of all. You begin to believe in something softer than escape, something subtler than defiance, a form of survival that looks like noticing, like preserving, like holding on to who you are even when everything else insists you forget. That night as you drift to sleep beneath heavy wool with the wind curling around the eaves and the fire cracking low, you whisper to yourself, I am not lost, I am not gone, I am here. And in the quiet that follows the house, feels less like a cage, more like a body, one in which your voice still echoes. Word count 1095, awaiting continue. Bạn đã nói continue. Chat GPT đã nói. Section Jean. The chapel bell tolls softly at dawn. 3 slow chimes, meant for morning prayer. But to your ears they sound like a warning, or a countdown. You dress slowly, layering wool over linen, lacing your bodice with cold fingers. The chamber is still dark, the air tinged with smoke from last night's fire, and the faint metallic scent of snowmelt seeping in through the cracks. Today you're expected to visit the convent. A formality, they said. A gesture of piety before marriage. A blessing from the sisters. But you know better. The convent rests on the far side of the estate, half a day's ride in good weather. Your carriage bumps along the frozen path wheels, crunching ice. Inside the air is thick with the smell of damp wool cloaks, and the lavender sachet your maid tucked into the seat pocket. A poor attempt at comfort. Outside fields pass in a blur of white and grey. You press your forehead to the window, and you wonder, what happens to women who don't marry? Where do they go when they say no? At the convent, the air changes. It's quieter. Still. Not peaceful exactly, but purposeful. The nuns move like whispers. Their footsteps barely stir the straw-strewn stone floors. Their robes smell of beeswax and starch their hands red from winter. You're greeted by Sister Miriam. She smiles like someone who knows too much. And maybe she does. She leads you to the herb cellar. Not the chapel. Not the guest hall. The walls down here are lined with jars, roots, seeds, dried leaves. It smells like soil and bitter tea, and the faintest sweetness of dried rose hips. You breathe in deep. It's the first time in weeks you feel like you're not pretending. Sister Miriam offers you tea. It's hot murky laced with something floral and sharp. You sip. It burns your tongue, but in a good way. You don't have to speak, she says, pouring herself a cup. But you can. You nod silent. She waits. Finally you ask, do you ever regret it? She tilts her head. The vows, or the leaving behind, both. A long pause. Then she smiles soft and crooked. Every day, and never. She tells you stories, not from scripture, from memory, about a nun who fell in love with the baker's daughter and was nearly exiled, about a prioress who hid forbidden letters in the false bottom of her writing desk, about a young novice who carved love poems into the underside of her bed frame. Historians often overlook the emotional lives of nuns, flattening them into caricatures of either purity or repression. But the truth is more complex. Desire doesn't vanish in cloisters. It changes shape. As Sister Miriam speaks, you realize something she's not warning you. She's not trying to convince you to stay or go. She's just witnessing. And in her stories you find echoes of yourself. Not full reflections, but outlines, enough to feel less alone. Before you leave, she presses something into your palm. It's a page, torn from a psalter. But the writing isn't scripture. It's a poem. She carried no torch, only warmth enough to melt the frost beneath her own name. You don't speak. You don't need to. On the way home, the sun dips lower. The trees cast long shadows across the road, each branch like a finger reaching out to trace your thoughts. You clutch the poem in your lap. The parchment is warm from your hand, the words still blooming. That night you place it beside your collection, the ribbon, the dried herb, the unsent letters. Not trophy, not tokens, but truths. Pieces of the person you are not who you're told to be. Before sleep takes you, you think of Sister Miriam again, of her stillness, of her strength, and of how quiet love can be even when the world demands silence. There's a peculiar hush to the castle today. Even the servants seem to move more slowly, their footsteps softer, their voices lowered to murmurs like people speaking in a chapel. The usual smells, onion, soup, wood smoke, damp straw hang in the air but feel muted, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. You know why. He's leaving. You weren't told directly, of course, but word has a way of slinking through kitchens and stairwells and laundry lines. One of the guards mentioned it to a stable boy, who mentioned it to a scullery maid, who let it slip while plucking feathers from a pheasant. He's been reassigned. A new post. Far away, away from you. You try not to feel anything. You focus on your stitching. The thread gliding through linen. The tiny sounds, shick, 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 of the needle working its path. But the cloth trembles in your hands. You tell yourself it's the draft, but it isn't. Historians debate how often medieval lovers were separated by design, whether noble families quietly relocated threats to their daughters' reputations, whether love was snuffed out not by confrontation, but by distance. No one has to say it aloud. They just send a letter, assign a new duty, and love dissolves under the pretense of duty. You go to the upper corridor, the one that overlooks the west courtyard, and there he is, packing his saddlebag, adjusting the bridle. His breath fogs in the air, mixing with the cloud of steam from the horse's muzzle. He doesn't look up, but you watch, and with every movement tightening the straps, adjusting the cinch, you memorize him. Not the fantasy, not the could have been, but the real person, with dirt on his cloak hem, with a scar at his temple, with that one glove missing a button. Then, just before he mounts, he pauses. He places something gently on the stone ledge by the fountain. A pouch, small, leather, drawstring tied, and then he's gone. Just like that. You wait. Not long, but long enough. Then you walk slowly, deliberately across the courtyard. Your slippers crunch on frost. The hem of your gown soaks in melted snow. The pouch is cold in your hand. You open it. Inside a carved bead. Dark wood, worn smooth by touch, and a strip of parchment. You were the reason I stayed longer. You'll be the reason I go. You press your thumb to the words. The ink is faintly raised. Still fresh. You don't cry, but your lungs feel tight, like there's too much winter in the air. That evening, Eleanor finds you staring into the hearth. She sits beside you without a word, just passes you a mug of warm milk. Steam curls from it like a sigh. You sip. It tastes like cloves and honey, and you whisper, "He's gone." She doesn't ask who, just nods, and says, "Then let him go." Letting go in the Middle Ages was not always theatrical. No tragic balcony scenes, no swords or poisoned cups. Sometimes it was this: a key at courtyard, a carved bead, a mug of milk, shared between cousins who never quite learned how to say goodbye. That night you don't write. You don't sneak to the garden. You don't fold any ribbon or slip anything under the chapel door. Instead, you lie still in your bed, one hand resting on your chest, feeling it rise, fall, rise again. You are still here, without him, still breathing. And in that silence, something hard softens. Not healed, not forgotten, but loosened like a knot that finally begins to give. The mornings begin earlier now. You rise before the bells, before the servants stir. The sky is still the colour of ash, the air sharp with cold, and your breath coils in front of your lips, as if even your lungs are reluctant to speak. It's not fear waking you anymore. It's a strange, clear calm, like the space that follows a storm, not peace, but clean emptiness. Today you're leaving for the coast, to visit Lord Rowell's estate. A premarital tour. A chance, they say, for you to become familiar with your future dominion. You stare at the word dominion in the letter your father hands you. It feels more like exile. The carriage is heavy, with furs and cloth bundles, and the scent of boiled leather. Eleanor rides with you. She brings a small bag of candied ginger and pretends it's for nausea. She doesn't speak much, just watches the road. The countryside rolls by bare trees, distant smoke trails from peasant hearths, frozen streams like silver veins drawn across the fields. The sky hangs low and flat, and everything feels too quiet. By mid-afternoon the sea appears, and everything changes. You've never seen it before. It's not gentle, not blue, not like the tapestries show. It's massive, slate-grey, roaring softly with each breath. It smells like salt and cold metal and wet rope. The wind whips your veil sideways, tangling your hair and pulling the taste of the ocean into your mouth. You feel it before you understand it. This place will not love you. Lord Raoul's estate is large. Stone towers crusted with lichen, wooden walkways damp with spray. Everything smells like damp wool and burnt tallow. Servants greet you politely, with bowed heads and practiced hands. Lord Raoul himself is not unkind, but he is distant, heavy-footed, more concerned with inventories than introductions. His voice is thick with sleep or wine, you can't tell which. He doesn't ask what you think of the sea. The room they give you is cold. The windows face the waves and the wind sings through the cracks. The fire never quite warms the floor. Even the bed feels damp. You lay your things out on the chest, your comb, your psalter, your bundle of ribbons. You touch each one like a memory, and then you sit, and you wait. That night there's a feast in your honor. It's smaller than the ones at home. The table dressed in plain cloth. The food simple fish, turnips, a tart that tastes too sour. The candlelight flickers unevenly, shadows dancing like moths on the walls. Lord Raoul speaks little. You nod at the right moments. You smile when required. You sip the wine and feel it burn, a thin warmth threading through the emptiness in your stomach. You wonder what he sees when he looks at you, if he sees you at all. Later in your chamber, you peel off the layers of cloth. They smell like salt and unfamiliar soap. You shiver as you slip into your underdress. The cold lingers on your skin like a question, and then you notice it. On the edge of the windowsill, a shell, small, polished, pink, perfectly clean. You pick it up, turn it over. No note, but on the back, etched faintly, a symbol, the same one carved into the stable beam, a crescent, and a dot, his mark. You sit down, shell in hand, wind howling through the cracks, and you laugh, a soft, stunned sound, half joy, half ache. He's been here, not today, not even this week perhaps, but once, long ago, and he left this. Maybe for himself, maybe for someone else, maybe for you. You place the shell beneath your pillow, not as a charm, but as proof that even here on this grey cliff in this heavy house, with this future looming over you, there was once a sign of something tender, even if it's gone, even if no one believes it. You believe it. You remember, and that you think is the start of something. Maybe not freedom, but défiance, quiet, gentle, just enough. The next morning the sea fog rolls in thick and low. You wake to the sound of gulls, crying beyond the window, and the cold damp of mist pressing into your bedding. The fire has died. Your breath fogs as you rise the floor like frozen slate beneath your bare feet. You wrap yourself in a shawl and open the shutters. The ocean is gone, just whiteness now, and in that blank space you feel strangely safe, like the world has paused, like you're invisible. The day is filled with formalities. A tour of the estate, a walk through the orchard, bare branches, salted wind, your boots slick with wet leaves. Lord Raoul speaks of yields and trade routes. He gestures toward the ships, moored in the harbour, outlines plans for the spring planting. You nod. You listen, but you hear none of it. Your ears are full of wind and memory, the weight of that shell beneath your sleeve. That afternoon you slip away. Just for a moment, you find the cliffside path worn narrow, its edges softened by moss and time. The sea roars far below, loud and indifferent. You walk, and think, and breathe, and finally, when you round a bend, you see it. A small outcropping, shielded by brush, almost hidden. A spot that feels chosen, and on the stone, blackened by years of salt and soot, a faint mark. That crescent again. You kneel. The rock is cold, but you press your palm flat against it, as if touch could time travel, as if your skin might call something back from the past. You don't know when he was here, or why, but the thought comforts you, that he once stood in this very place, that he saw what you now see, that the sea sang to both of you. Historians rarely speak of secret spots, of personal shrines, but medieval women often had them, little spaces tucked into corners of convent gardens, behind kitchen walls, beneath the roots of trees, places where they could feel things. Think, remember, grieve. You stay on the cliff until the cold numbs your fingers, and when you return, something has softened inside you, not erased, but softened. That evening Lord Raoul asks to speak with you. Alone, you sit across from him in the smaller solar, lit only by a single candle and the pale glow of moonlight on stone. The hearth crackles. He doesn't touch you. He doesn't leer, but his eyes are heavy. "I hope you find comfort here," he says. You nod because that's expected. Then he adds, "I don't ask for love." And you realize that might be the kindest thing he could have said. Later, back in your room, you stare at your reflection in the mirror. Your face is still yours, but your expression is new. Not sorrowful, not resigned, just thoughtful. You remove the shell from your sleeve and place it on the windowsill. Then slowly, deliberately, you begin to write. Not a letter, not a poem, just words. I don't know what happens next, but I will feel it. I won't vanish. I won't fold myself so small that I disappear. You fold the page. You do not hide it. You leave it on the bedside table, as if to say, I was here. You sleep deeply that night. No dreams, just the sound of waves far below, the shell on your sill catching moonlight, the sense that, at least for now, you still belong to yourself. They call it a test, a tradition, they say, a symbolic ritual to prove your virtue, your truthfulness, your worth. You are not told what it entails until you're already in the hall, stone walls echoing every movement, every word. The room smells of wax, damp parchment, and something metallic. A red-hot iron rod lies on a silver tray. You freeze. Lord Raoul is not present. This isn't his doing. It's the priests, the elders, the household advisors who whisper about omens, lineage, and ensuring harmony. The trial is ceremonial, of course. No one expects you to fail. But still you must perform it. The ordeal. In some parts of medieval Europe, women were asked to walk a certain number of paces holding a hot iron bar. Their hands would be wrapped and sealed for days. If when unwrapped the burns were clean and healing, she was deemed honest, pure, blessed. Historians still argue whether these trials were taken seriously or were just theatre. But either way, the fear was real. The pressure was real. The possibility of pain, very real. You look at the iron. It glows faintly. The heat of it kisses your skin even from a distance. You think of the letters under your bed, of the glance across the hall, of your hand brushing the hem of his cloak as he passed. You have not sinned, but you have felt, and in this world sometimes that's enough to be guilty. They ask you to kneel. Your palms sweat, your breath tightens, the fabric at your throat suddenly too close. Then the priest's voice cuts through the air like a blade. Do you swear you carry no dishonor? You do not answer immediately. You stare at the iron, and you wonder, is this a moment to lie, or a moment to live? Finally you say, I swear I carry only memory, not shame. There's a murmur. A Pause. Someone clears their throat. And then, unexpectedly, they nod. The trial is called off. You don't know why. Perhaps your answer unsettled them. Perhaps someone intervened. Perhaps they simply believed you. But in that moment you feel taller than the tapestries. You return to your room, your hands unburned, but trembling. The shell is still on your windowsill. The sea louder now. Closer. You sit, wrap your arms around your knees, and let the shaking pass. Eleanor enters a moment later. She doesn't ask what happened. She just brings a basin of warm water and a cloth soaked in lavender. She places it in your lap. Even when we pass the trial, she says softly, it leaves a mark. You wash your hands. There is no wound, but you feel something invisible peeling away inside you. Some layer of silence, of acceptance, of obedience, and beneath it something else. Enger, not loud, not burning, but steady. That night you write for hours, not to anyone, just to say things, to yourself, to the part of you that held the iron metaphorically or not and refused to flinch. You write, I was asked to carry fire. I carried memory instead. I was asked to bleed. I held still. I was asked to break. I did not. You fall asleep with ink on your fingers, and wake feeling more yourself than you have in weeks. The sea wind howls through the shutters, and you welcome it. Let it whip through your bones. Let it find the ashes of your fear, and blow them clean. The next day you're left alone. No attendants, no housekeepers, no Eleanor. A rare silence wraps itself around the estate, the kind that feels intentional, curated, as if the house is watching to see what you'll do with your solitude. You pull on your cloak and step out into the garden. The wind carries sea spray across your face, sharp as vinegar. The path beneath your boots is slick, paved in uneven stones and wet moss. You move slowly, letting the cold settle into your skin, letting it wake you fully. And then you see her. She sits at the far end of the hedge maze. A woman you've never seen before. Older, proud, dressed in black with silver thread laced through her sleeves. Her eyes are unreadable but alert, like a hawk that has chosen not to strike yet. You almost turn away. But curiosity tugs at you harder than caution. You walk toward her. She doesn't speak first. You do. Are you part of Lord Raoul's household? She gives a half smile dry as kindling. I was. Long before you were promised. You sit beside her. The bench is slick with dew, but neither of you seems to care. Her hands are clasped in her lap, fingers gnarled with age and use. You notice the rings, 3 of them, heavy worn, each bearing a different crest. She tells you her story slowly, like pouring honey into cold tea. A widow, twice, once by war, once by accident. She never remarried after the second. Some hearts don't break, she says they shift. They turn like a key in the lock and open a different room. You listen, you don't interrupt, because there's something in her voice that feels like a mirror held to the future. She speaks of duty, of obedience, of how easily women were made into vessels for other people's ambitions. Then she says, but love, when it comes to women like us, isn't fire. It's weight. It presses in. It tests how much room we have left in our own bodies. You stare out at the sea. Let the wind carry her words into the folds of your dress. And you ask softly, did you love him? She smiles again barely. Enough to remember, not enough to regret. Historians rarely record the emotional interior of widows. They are written off as shadows of former men. But in truth, widowhood in the Middle Ages could be the start of autonomy, of financial power, of freedom if they chose not to remarry. Some even took lovers. Some took vows. Some disappeared. Some stayed exactly where they were and quietly ruled. Before you part, the old woman stands. Her joints crack softly, like dry parchment being folded. She touches your chin gently, then your cheek. You're not the first girl to lose something she never really had, she says. And you won't be the last. Then she walks away, and the wind swallows her. You sit there long after she's gone, thinking of what she meant, what you meant, what all of it means. And you realize there's power in staying, but there's also power in watching, and knowing, and not forgetting. That night you light a candle, just one. You write her name in the margin of your psalter, not because it was asked of you, but because she deserves to be remembered, even if no one else will. Then you take out one of your letters, one you wrote long ago never sent. You tear it into strips, feed it piece by piece into the flame. You watch the paper curl, blacken, vanish, and the scent it leaves behind is sweet, like dried mint, like closure, like something gone but no longer haunting. You sleep with the window open, the sea louder than usual, the wind colder, your dreams softer. And in them you're not a bride, not a daughter, not a symbol, just a woman walking along the cliffside, alone, but not empty. By now the servants speak to you differently. They curtsy deeper, their eyes linger longer. Some call you milady, with a tone that's not quite respectful, more watchful, like they're waiting for you to change into something they can understand. They don't know that you already have. This morning, a minstrel arrives, sent from the neighbouring barony apparently to entertain the future lady of the coast. He's young with a feather in his hat and a grin far too wide for this grim place. You don't expect much, but when he begins to sing, something shifts. Not in him, in you. The song is about a noblewoman and a troubadour, predictably. The lyrics are syrupy, full of exaggerated sighs and star-crossed tropes. The rhyme scheme is clumsy, the melody repetitive. But there's one moment, one line. She listened not to flattery, but to the silence he carried between his words. It lands like a stone dropped in water, because you remember that silence. You remember the way he stood beside you without touching, the way he waited, the space he gave you. After the performance you slip out. You find a bench in the empty hall and sit with your thoughts. The stone beneath you is warm from sunlight. The air smells faintly of ash and thyme. Somewhere in the kitchens a maid is baking something with nutmeg. The scent curls into the air like a lullaby, and in that quiet you wonder, what would it take for you to feel whole? Not just content, but fully yourself, in body, in name, in breath. That afternoon you find the minstrel alone. He's tuning his lute, humming to himself perched near the fountain with boots kicked off. You approach. Did you write that song? He looks up surprised. I did. Did she exist? He hesitates. Not really. Then adds, but she could. You smile. And that's enough. Historians argue about whether noblewomen inspired real songs or if troubadours just invented characters to earn coin. Most agree it was a mix. Some women were muses, some were myths, some were both and neither. But all of them, one way or another, became story. That night, you begin to write again. But not letters, not poems, songs. You hum them as you bathe. You mouth them silently as you brush your hair. They're simple. They don't rhyme perfectly. Some don't rhyme at all. But they hold truth. She loved quietly, lost honestly, lived anyway. You tuck one verse into the seam of your cloak. You hide another inside the pocket of your psalter. Not because you're afraid, but because it feels deliciously private, like lighting a candle in a cave. Not for rescue, just to know you can. The next day a servant brings you a gift. Nu card, nu note, just a bundle of herbs tied with red thread. You recognize the knot, the scent, the shape. It's mint and rose and dried yarrow. You press it to your nose and smile. You don't need to know who sent it. You already know. At supper, Lord Raoul toasts you. He says you've shown decorum, wisdom, grace under scrutiny. You raise your goblet. You drink, and inside, something small and defiant whispers, I have also shown myself, even if only to you, even if only in fragments. That night the sea sounds louder, or maybe your heart does. You sleep with a half-finished song on your lips, and wake knowing, even if no one else ever sings it, you did. You were. You are. The wind changes. You feel it the moment you open the window. It no longer carries the heavy salt sting of winter. It's softened, shifted. There's a whisper of damp soil and something green just beginning to stir beneath the frost. Spring is coming, and so is your wedding. The castle hums with preparation. New linens arrive. Jewels are polished. A seamstress is summoned from a neighbouring town with fingers thin as quills and a gaze that misses nothing. You stand on a stool while she works. Her hands tug and fold and pin, turning you into something structured, something seamless. The gown is ivory silk, edged with gold thread. It glows faintly in the firelight, elegant, restrained, and impossibly still. You feel like a statue. A tapestry figure come to life. And you wonder, will anyone see the person inside this dress? Later you slip into the herb garden. What's left of it? The frost has melted into black soil. Shoots of green push tentatively through the dirt. A single violet has bloomed near the edge of the wall. You kneel beside it, touch its fragile petals. They're soft as breath, trembling in the breeze. You breathe in deep. It smells like damp earth memory, and something you can't quite name. You hear footsteps. Light. Measured. It's not him. You know that before you even look, but it's someone who knows him. One of the stable boys. Young. Pale. Eyes always downcast. He hands you a folded cloth. Inside a piece of parchment. Yellowed. Soft. They say violets only grow where secrets sleep beneath the frost. So I left one for you, just in case. You close your eyes, and for a moment the garden disappears. There's only warmth, and breath, and presence. Historians rarely trace the life of a love once it fades from record. But traces remain, flowers pressed into books, initials carved into beams, songs written without signatures. Not all endings are erasures. Some are roots. You press the note to your lips, then fold it again. Carefully, reverently, you place it in the hidden seam of your dress, the one no one will notice, just over your ribs, where your heart still hums its quiet, stubborn tune. As the wedding approaches, the castle grows louder. Carts rattle over cobblestones. Bakers curse at sunken bread. Priests rehearse Latin beneath their breath. You move through it all like a ghost in silk, nodding, smiling, preparing, and yet each night you return to the same place. That window, that bed, that ribbon, that shell, the private archive of your real self. One evening Eleanor joins you. She brings honeyed wine and 2 slices of lemon cake stolen from the kitchens. You sit on the floor like children. Eat with your fingers. She asks, do you think it's wrong to remember? You don't answer right away. You look at the candle between you. Its flame dances soft and flickering. The wax runs in slow golden rivulets. And then you say, number I think forgetting would be worse. She nods, raises her slice in mock salute. To memory then. You clink crumbs, and you both laugh. Not loudly, but real. That night you lie awake and write one final verse. I wore white, but I remembered colour. I spoke vows, but I carried truth. I bent my head, but I never knelt all the way. You fold the paper, tuck it into your shoe, and sleep soundly knowing, whatever happens next, you are not just someone's bride. You are your own archive. You are your own voice. You are your own vow. The day arrives with birdsong, not loud, not jubilant, but steady rhythmic trills that weave in and out of the sea breeze like a needle through cloth. You wake early, heart silent at first, then slowly beginning its careful drumbeat. Your gown hangs by the hearth. Your veil freshly pressed lies, folded on a stool. The chamber smells of beeswax salt, and a faint trace of rosewater, someone's attempt at beauty. You dress slowly, each layer heavier than the last. The chemise soft and familiar, the corset laced tighter than comfort allows. The underskirt starched and rustling, the outer gown ivory and gold cool against your skin, and finally the veil light as breath but heavier than any crown. You catch your reflection in the polished metal plate. You barely recognize her, but your eyes haven't changed. Still watching, still aware, still you. The hall below fills with sound boots, bells, whispered prayers. Someone coughs. A lute begins to play a slow, sweet melody. The scent of crushed herbs rises from the entryway lavender thyme yarrow. For blessing, for luck, for fertility. Of course, Eleanor enters without knocking. She carries a tiny bundle. I wasn't sure if you'd want it, she says, placing it in your hand. But it's yours. You open it slowly. Inside the carved bead, the pressed violet, the crescent shell. You smile, and your eyes sting. She smooths your veil, and whispers, you'll remember yourself. Then she leaves. The ceremony is simple. No drama, no surprises. The priest chants. Lord Raoul stands stiff and solemn. His palm is warm and dry as he takes your hand. His thumb doesn't move. No comfort, no squeeze, just contact. You speak the words. Your voice does not shake, but inside, something soft folds in on itself and tucks away. Not broken, just braced. After the vows there is bread, salt, wine. The guests cheer. Someone toasts your beauty. Someone else praises your father's wisdom. You smile. You sip. You play the part. And all the while, you hold on to one truth. This isn't all you are. This isn't all you'll be. That night, the celebration dies down. The hall empties. The candles dim. Your chamber is lit with soft oil lamps and the glow of the sea through open shutters. You sit on the edge of the bed, still, wrapped in ivory, lace bunched in your lap like petals fallen too soon. You remove the veil, the rings, the gown. You slip into the linen chemise. Barefoot now you walk to the window. The moon hangs low, full and amber. The waves glitter with silver edges. And there on the ledge where you once placed the shell, you lay something new. A ribbon, green, unknotted, uncreased, left open. Historians often wonder how medieval women coped with the quiet aftermath. The space between ceremony and expectation. The weight of having spoken vows in a voice that still held secrets. You don't wonder, you know, because tonight, you sit beside the window. You hum a song only you remember, and you let the night hold you. Later in the hush before dawn you wake, not from noise, but from a feeling. You reach under your pillow. Fingers fin parchment. Another note. Number. Just your own writing. A line you forgot you'd penned weeks ago. I will not vanish. You fold it again. Place it into the seam of your wedding chest. And whisper I won't. You sleep again. Not as a bride. Not as a daughter. But as a woman who walked to the edge of her story and decided not to stop there. Spring settles in like a secret. The air warms slowly but not without resistance. The ocean is still grey, still loud but softer now. The wind no longer slices. It brushes, wraps around your shoulders like an old shawl you forgot you loved. And you begin to move differently. Not dramatically, but with intention, like someone quietly making more space in her own skin. You rise before the household most mornings, not out of duty, but desire. You walk the orchard path barefoot, letting dew kiss your toes. The grass is cool, wet, fragrant with new life. The pear trees have begun to blossom. Their petals drift in the air like promises no one dared speak aloud. You breathe deeply, and for the first time in weeks your breath doesn't catch. It lands. You've begun tending a small garden. It started with one pot on the windowsill, then another. Now a corner of the courtyard, unclaimed, neglected, has become yours. You plant sage, marjoram, calendula, things that heal, things that endure, things no one will ask you about. A few of the servants whisper, not out of malice, just uncertainty. A lady with dirt under her nails is something they don't have a category for, but they still bring you compost. And quietly one leaves a bundle of dried chamomile by your door. You've started writing again, but not to anyone, and not on parchment, on fabric scraps, birch bark, clay shards. You write short things. My body remembers. I am not ornamental. Still here. You bury them in the soil. You press them into tree trunks. You sew one into the hem of your shift. It's not superstition. It's survival. One afternoon you find Eleanor in the library. She's reading a book of saints, but her finger is holding the place in a poem tucked between the pages. You sit beside her. Say nothing. She turns the book toward you. It's a passage about a nun who painted visions on chapel walls, hidden beneath layers of plaster. Not for glory, not even for worship, just so the space would know it had been seen. You close the book and whisper, I'm painting too. Eleanor smiles. Historians sometimes forget the women who made quiet art, embroidered truths into altar cloths, wove resistance into lace, hid verses in the margins, but their voices linger faint but unforgotten. That evening Lord Raoul surprises you. He brings you a gift, a carved box, finely made, cedarwood, lightly scented with clove. You open it to find jars of ink, quills, sheets of vellum. I heard you like to write, he says. It's awkward, not kite kind, not kite understanding, but not cruel. And you nod, because sometimes gestures matter more than precision. That night, you write your name. Just once. On fresh vellum. Big bold letters. No family crest. No title. No borrowed glory. Just the name you whispered to yourself that winter night beneath the chapel window. You place the page beside your bed. Not to prove anything. Just to see it. To own it. Before sleep you hum a melody. One of your own. It's uneven. Raw. But it fits. Like a dress sewn without a pattern but made for your body. You close your eyes. The sea is quieter now. Or maybe you've learned how to let its roar soften into song. The village girls begin to come, one by one at first, then in pairs, then on market days in quiet clusters, eyes lowered, hands clasped, but walking with purpose. They come under the pretense of delivering eggs, herbs, letters from the steward, but they stay longer than they need to. Linger at the garden wall. Watch your hands as you work the soil. They are not here for tasks. They are here for permission. You offer tea the first time. Mint and honey. Simple. Warm. The girl accepts with both hands, the cup trembling slightly. You don't ask questions. You don't offer advice. You just listen as she speaks haltingly, then faster, as if words had been waiting in her chest for too long. She tells you about a boy, a promise, a pregnancy that vanished in a fever and left only shame. You don't flinch. You offer more tea. Word spreads. You are not a healer, not officially, but they come to you as if you are, for herbs, for counsel, for the simple comfort of someone who doesn't repeat their names. You keep no records. You give no commands. You just receive. One girl brings you a broken necklace, another a poem scratched into a roof tile, another a folded ribbon, crimson frayed at one end. You take each one gently, wrap them in cloth, place them in a wooden box. You name it, the box of kept things. Not secrets, not sins, just truths too soft for the world to hold. Historians rarely record the women who became muses, and even less so the ones who became mysteries, the ones other women sought in silence. The ones whose names were murmured in alleyways like prayers or warnings. The ones who inspired poetry but only in private. You've become that, not a figure of scandal, but of possibility. Then one evening a song reaches your window. It's crude, sweet, sung in a low voice off-key but earnest. You rise, peek through the shutters, and there he is. A boy, barely grown, awkward posture, lute held like a shield. He finishes the verse, then waits. You open the window, say nothing. He bows dramatically, blushes, and runs. You laugh, but you feel it, the pulse of something passing from you to him. Not romance, permission. You write again that night, not about love, about voice, about what it means to be seen without being claimed, to be remembered without being possessed. You write, let them forget my face, let them misspell my name, but let them carry the way I made them feel as if it were theirs. The next day, Eleanor leaves. Her family has arranged another match. A distant province. A man who writes letters too perfectly. She holds your hand as she boards the cart, squeezes once, and says, I won't forget. You smile, and you know she won't. But even if she did, you've already kept her in your box. That night you light every candle in your room. Let the shadows dance. Let the wind rattle the windows. Let the stories climb out of the walls like ivy. You dance, barefoot, to no music, or maybe to all of it. You move in circles, arms open, hair loose, face turned upward, and you whisper not to the saints, not to the sea, to yourself. This body is not apology. This name is not ornament. This life is not borrowed. You sleep on the floor that night, blanket over your shoulders, shell in your hand, and you wake to birdsong. Again. Summer arrives on the breath of the ocean. The days grow long, golden and fragrant salt air mingling with the bloom of wild roses. The cliffs are covered now in green, the paths dry beneath your feet, the sky so wide it feels like it might spill over. You walk every morning, same trail, same silence, but it no longer feels like hiding. It feels like owning. The village girls still come, but less for solace now, and more to share. They bring stories, laughter, news. One tells you she refused a proposal. Another has begun carving figurines to sell in the market. One has written her first song and dares to hum it under her breath while pretending to pick time. You offer tea. You listen. You smile. And inside you glow. Because this was never about being remembered. This was about remembering themselves. Lord Raoul doesn't ask question. He watches, though. Sometimes from the upper terrace. Sometimes from the stables. He does not interfere. One evening he hands you a parcel. Inside a book of blank pages. I thought perhaps you'd outgrown scraps, he says, not unkindly. You nod. Not in thanks. In recognition. Historians might reduce your life to a line, married into the Raoul estate, no surviving children. That's what the records will say. But that's not the truth. Not the full truth. Because even now, there is a girl singing in the orchard who believes she matters. Even now, there's a box beneath your bed, filled with quiet proof that women felt things. Even now your breath fogs the window as you whisper a song to the sea, and the waves carry it farther than any name ever could. You sit at your writing desk as the sun lowers into the water. You write the final entry in your hidden book. I lived. Not loudly, not cleanly, not as expected, but I lived. And I taught them how to feel it too. You close the book, wrap it in linen, place it in the hollow behind the garden wall. Not for safekeeping, for discovery. One day someone else will find it, and know they're not alone. That night the sea is quiet, the gulls are still, the candles flicker low, and as you lie in bed, barefoot hair unbound a breeze brushing your skin like a lullaby, you feel a new kind of peace. Not the absence of sorrow, but the presence of meaning. Your last thought before sleep is not of him, not of duty, not even of love. It's of you, and how far you came, and how you never left yourself behind. Wind down final. 300 words. So now as the last embers glow behind your eyes, and the air grows still, let yourself fall gently into the hush of night. Imagine the ocean outside your window, the waves rolling in then away like slow, steady breathing. The scent of sea salt softens into lavender. The breeze presses cool against your arms, your cheek, your collarbone like a silken promise that nothing will chase you here. Your name is safe. Your memories are yours. Every whisper you hid in the garden, every note tucked under the windowsill, every word you wrote and never sent, they are still alive, still held, still humming, and now you get to rest. You've carried so much for so long, but you carried it beautifully, delicately, without dropping yourself along the way. So loosen your fingers, soften your yaw, let your thoughts slow like tides. Let your chest rise and fall. You are not just the sum of who loved you, you are the keeper of your own story. And tonight, you can set it down just for a while. Let the stars keep watch. Let the wind hold the chorus. Let the quiet do its work. Sleep well, love. You're home.